Ioannis, you were one of the founding engineers at DeepMind. You worked on some of the biggest breakthroughs at, I would argue, the most important research lab probably ever in AI. Why the hell did you leave?
Actually, that's a really good question. Yeah, so I mean, I'll just say a few things about DeepMind. I think that it is true that they were the pioneers of the AGI or the AI age. The lab started in 2010. I actually joined in 2012, and I spent more than a decade there doing a lot of the deep reinforcement learning research that came out. Deep reinforcement learning is literally it's a type of machine learning that it's like learning through trial and error. That's the whole idea. So I did that for a decade, and myself and my co-founder, Misha, we started Reflection about 2 years ago on two main premises. I think that if we go back to 2024, there was the time where everyone felt that's all about more data, more compute, more pre-training, as they used to call it. And after having spent a whole decade really working on reinforcement learning and the idea of systems learning via trial and error, both myself and my co-founder, we felt that this is the next set of, this is the methods that will actually unlock the next set of capabilities. So this is one reason why. And the second reason is because we really believed in open science. So probably what you've seen is that for the past few years, I think especially after ChatGPT came out, AI research is behind closed doors. All the big labs, they don't release or they don't publish the research. The models are not available to the research community, so they can actually build on all of that. And just felt that fundamentally this is not the right way for the most transformational technology of our time to be built. We really believe that by engaging the research community, by having something out there that other research institutions and other people around the world can build on top of, by democratizing access to this technology, this is how you can ensure that there is fast scientific progress, and at the same time, this technology gets democratized.
So there's a lot of debate and distinction about what open source mean. What does it mean for you? And I know the other term, open weights. Are you committed to having open weights for your models going forward?
Yeah, so I think there's a distinction between open source and open weight. Open source means that in effect, you just open source, where you just give out everything from data center to data sets to the code that you use to train the models. And open weight means that once the model is ready and trained, you actually give it to the community. I think fundamentally what's important is for the weights to be out there. The data sets, sometimes they have IP restrictions. They cannot be widely, distributed. The code usually tends to be, especially at the frontier, built in a way that is all about optimizing the use of the hardware. So what it's important is that there is actually an open weight model, a model that other people can actually take. They can fine-tune, they can inspect it, they can actually see what are the shortcomings. And one of the things that we've actually seen, especially with the latest models, is that by just really studying the capabilities of these models, we can actually just make them safer and we can just find their weaknesses.
Yeah. So Reflection was open weight from day one and will be 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Take me back to the beginning of last year, 2025, and I forget, I think it was January, the DeepSeek model that sort of, the stock market changed and dramatically overnight, and there was this big narrative that DeepSeek and open source and really cheap models were going to take over the world. What was that like for you? How did you change your strategy in response to that?
I think that the DeepSeek moment was a wake-up call for many people in the West for two main reasons. First, it was the first model that was really powerful, and it came out of a lab that wasn't a US lab. At the same time, it kind of showed that if you really optimize for the hardware, and if you're just really clever about how you just go about it, and if you just build a bit behind the frontier, then you can be more efficient in terms of compute, in terms of the cost that it takes to build those models. And fundamentally, actually, I think what started was this revolution of building on top of open models.
Yeah.
And currently, in the world, if you look around, There are kind of like, the closed labs, which are mostly the frontiers dominated by US-based companies like Anthropic or OpenAI, DeepMind, and then there's like the open weight frontier that's like dominated by the Chinese labs.
Yeah.
Now, fundamentally, like we know that the infrastructure, we know that the world has always been built on top of open protocols, open systems, right? Like this will happen with the internet, and this is what's bound to happen with AI. So it is important that like there is a frontier open model coming out of the US, and that's exactly what Reflection is building.
What do you say to the critics? Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, has been probably one of the most vocal critics of open source, saying that basically we're just handing this over to criminals and potentially to the enemies of Western countries.
Yeah, so I'd say that like two things first. First of all, there is like open models out there. They're coming out of China. So like in that sense, like half of the point is mute. At the same time, I think that like there's a trade-off here, like between being open by just like putting something like powerful out there and trusting the community, but like also working with the community, and then just like try to avoid that. But in that case, you actually end up having a concentration of power. Like the most powerful technology actually like sit in the hands of like maybe three people in the whole world, which fundamentally I think that like doesn't sit well with me and Reflection. So it's kind of like between choosing democratizing access to the technology, and of course, there's like the fact that like this technology, can be used by people that you don't want them to use this technology. But like if you're really careful with like how you train the models, you put the effort in like safety and security, and we're actually doing that, and you work closely with the community to also like ensure that other places, other institutions in the world do the same, then you can actually get most of the benefits and just like avoid the risks.
I mean, this seems to be an argument that has won in the Pentagon. So you were recently one of a short list of companies, probably the one that most people hadn't heard of before to receive these new Pentagon contracts. Can you tell me about as much as you can share or willing to share, when those conversations started? Like, did they approach you? Did you approach them? Like, what's the courtship with the Department of War like?
Well, it's not so much about like, when the conversation started. It's like more about what we try to achieve with these conversations and like what other labs try to achieve. And I think that by, there are like two ways you can actually approach the whole subject. You can either just like avoid to engage in conversation and then just like try and sit on your high horse and just like, kind of like say, I'm not going to even engage, or you can just like go and talk and try to ensure that like this technology, follows the best practices. Like there are like many wins. If you actually like read the MOU, there are like many wins that like the labs have actually achieved. And I think that like this is a step in the right direction, but just like ensuring that there are like clear protections that this technology is not used for like mass surveillance, for example. That's like something that like people really care about. And we really kind of like pushed hard, not just us, I guess like all the labs, we just like really pushed hard to ensure that, our voice is heard and like there are like fundamental protections, like when it comes to this technology.
And just sorry, so you're saying that was something that you were very thoughtful about, is the mass surveillance? Because everyone.
I mean, not just like us, I don't want to just like take all the credit, but definitely,
That was clearly like a controversy with Anthropic and the decision they made. You clearly made a different decision there than Anthropic sort of said, like drew a line in the sand and said we're not.
I think like the difference between Anthropic and us and like the other labs, not just us, is that we want to engage in the conversation. We want to just like have a really kind of like make our voice heard, make our opinion heard, and ensure that like we shape the opinion rather than just like stay back and say that like we won't even engage.
And so tell me about what would you say? What's the like critical use case of open source for in a government setting, and you have a partnership with South Korea for sovereign AI. What does open source bring to the table that a closed source model doesn't?
I think it's like all about strategic autonomy. This is actually something that like more and more people understand. That AI is like too important to just depend on someone else, and you actually like see that from startups or like scale-ups. Probably you've seen that like Cursor or like Perplexity, they're building on top of open models like Kimi or like DeepSeek. You also like see that in countries. They want to have like sovereign AI. This is like something that we see more and more. That like companies, enterprises, governments, everyone realizes that you need to own your own AI stack And the only way to actually achieve that is by actually having access to a model that you can deploy in your own infrastructure, you can control it, you can fine-tune it. And this is exactly what Reflection is building. It's kind of like empowering entities, governments, to just like own their own fate and control their own AI stacks.
Yeah. Do you think would this be first? I know you also have a Department of Energy project.
Yeah.
Right? Is that something you're looking to do more in other countries as well?
So I think like the Department of Energy is like a really good example of what I'm talking about here. The fact that Reflection is going to power the foundational models for like laboratories across the United States is a win of open source, right? Like this is exactly what we want to achieve. We want to be in a place where the technology we're building actually boosts and enables like scientific discovery. And the best way to do that is by actually like working with laboratories across the country that can actually take this technology and then just like build on top of it.
I want to jump back in time for a little bit to the AlphaGo work that you did. I imagine people have all probably seen the documentary and know familiar with that moment. First off, tell us what that moment was. There like a moment for you internally where you like saw the progress there and were like shocked? And I'm curious, what surprised you since then? Is there any breakthrough that you felt something similar to AlphaGo since that moment?
Yeah, so really good question. I think that like what happened with AlphaGo is that a few weeks before we actually released AlphaGo, there was like an article that had come out and claimed how we are like at least a decade away from achieving what AlphaGo achieved like a few weeks later. And it was kind of like a big surprise for like many people in the scientific community around how fast AI moves and how we went from like a system that was like good at Go but like nowhere close to like a human professional to just kind of within a year we were like at the frontier of like what's possible at Go. And now you just go and talk to the best Go players in the world and they actually use AI to train.
Yeah.
Actually like many of the things that enabled AlphaGo, you can actually see or you can draw parallels with like the methods that you're using today. The idea of like reinforcement learning, the idea of like learning from troves of human data. Back then it was games of Go played by human players. Now it's like the whole internet or like everything that's written by people, right? And then you just like add reinforcement learning and you really scale that and you can achieve something that's like much stronger than any human. So, after AlphaGo, I'd say that GPT-3 was kind of like another pivotal moment in terms of like AI development. And, we just like keep scaling. And it's like really amazing how simple methods that can scale when you just like give more compute to them. Actually, they can take you so far. And I think like we still have like a long way to go.
What about Mythos? Have you had access to that model yet?
We don't have access to Mythos.
No, but
yeah, but I just like know what's publicly available.
I'm curious what your thoughts on that. Like, do you think is that something that an open source model could be able to replicate?
Yeah. So fundamentally, I think that the difference between open and closed is not. It's like more about whether you can create the commercial engine that allows you to capitalize aggressively the same way that like the closed labs can do it. So you can just continue to build at the frontier. And the mission of Reflection is to build, to just like be at the frontier eventually, just like really be the company that like shapes the overall frontier and ensures that this frontier stays open and accessible to everyone. So I don't see a reason why, if we do our job right and we're doing it, we won't get there and there won't be an open Mythos.
Yeah. This is maybe an odd question as an American, but you're Greek. Your founder, I believe, is also co-founder is European as well.
No, my co-founder is American.
Oh, he's American. Okay, sorry. But you were based in London before. Did you consider starting the company in the UK or Europe?
No, we actually like knew that we had to start in the US. So we kind of like when we started the company, we just like started in the US. There's like some fundamental benefits to just being an American company, and that's why we.
Do you see that changing anytime soon, or is that?
I'm really hopeful that like things change. I'm a European, so definitely I would like to see the continent kind of like making the necessary changes so that like companies like Reflection can actually like start here. I mean, I haven't really seen anything that like points to that direction, unfortunately. But I can always remain hopeful.
Yeah, there's one of your, I guess, competitor, Mistral has been in France has been arguing, that this sort of sovereign AI, that European countries need to adapt European AI models, which at this point the only leading model developer is Mistral. Do you think that's true? Like from the conversations you've had with Europeans, companies, and officials?
No, I feel like definitely Europe understands the importance of like sovereign AI, and I think that, like Mistral is like spot on when it comes to like the premise of that. At the same time, it is important that like you actually like build at the frontier and you just like build models that are actually like close to the frontier.
I'm going to do with the last couple of minutes like a rapid fire round. Yes, no, or you can just, you don't have to answer. But so recently, your former colleague Demis from DeepMind came out and said we're going to reach artificial general intelligence (AGI) by 2030. Is that right? Sooner? Later?
And it kind of like depends on how you define AGI. And Demis has like his own kind of like interpretation or like his own like.
How does yours differ from his
definition? So I think like his definition is that you just like take a model and you train it on all the knowledge up until 1907, and then you just like see whether it can come up with the theory of general relativity, the way that Einstein did it. And for me, I think that like it's more of whether you can have a system that can really do anything that a human can do on a computer. So in that sense, it's like maybe kind of just a different definition. I'd say that like in the next 3 years, I expect that we'll have like something that looks like AGI, under my definition at least.
Yeah.
5 years for like Demis, yeah, I'd definitely buy that.
And that would be, does that look like, that's open superintelligence, it's the same timeline, you think that that's?
Yes.
Yeah. Does Europe need its own DeepSeek?
Say again?
Does Europe need its own DeepSeek?
Well, I mean, yes, I think that like, at the same time, it doesn't really necessarily mean that like they have to build it in Europe. Like it's all about ensuring that you have like sovereign AI, which means that you have like your own model that you can deploy on your own infrastructure. You can just like fine tune it. You can post train it, and it's less about like where it was trained.
You're obviously using NVIDIA chips. They're a partner and investor. Would you use Google TPUs?
So we are using like NVIDIA GPUs at the moment. NVIDIA is also like one of our main investor. We will just like use anything that like allows us to just achieve our mission. That's
cool. Last one real quick. Are we in an AI bubble?
I wouldn't say so, no.
All right. Ioannis, thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.